Chapter 19. Lara ran through the station corridor, heart pounding, hoping that the path to the command center was still secure. She didn't have time to proceed with caution. The flight to the DS terminal had taken only moments, but she'd felt each and every second as she struggled into her armor and waited for the airlock to seal, aware that every one of those passing seconds increased the chances that the team and Ellis were already dead. She ran to the stairs that would lead her to the command center, past the stinking corpse and the elevator where she'd almost been impregnated. The M41's tracker ticked to life as she passed the gouged and blasted elevator shaft, warning her of the spidery horde that still boiled behind the panels. She shuddered inwardly, but didn't slow her running sprint towards operations. The motion sensor quickly fell silent. Get to communications, pull the wires, shut it down. Her breath came in long, easy pulls, her muscles loose and her lungs in good shape, thanks to the treadmill on Nemesis. She hit the stairs smoothly, watched her boots come down squarely on every third step as she made the first flight. Her breathing seemed incredibly loud inside her helmet and against the dead silence of the station. The fight between the team and the bugs, if there still was one, was high over her head. Thousands of tons of plasticrete and metal between her and the men she meant to help. She could almost feel that weight pressing down as she bounded over the dead drone on the steps, watched the acid-eroded stairs pass beneath her in a tangle of black limbs and red light. The lounge of the center was as she remembered, but she only knew it in a moving, horrible blur now. The orange of the couches, the smell of dead flesh, the yawning holes in the floor where melted bodies lay. The door that led to the task at hand was the only thing clear, all she really saw or cared to see. Main computer, pull the panel, cut the wires. She stopped just inside the next corridor, just long enough to point the M41 at the communications room. Come on, she whispered breathlessly, but the small tracker remained silent. She counted to 5, desperate to get inside but also remembering the facehugger that they'd left alive. She was desperate, but not insane. Nothing. It must have crawled back into the air shaft. Lara slapped at the entry control and squeezed in as the panel slid open, already running for the main console as the door clicked to a stop. The cool air was thicker than she remembered, the scent of the decaying suicide corpse heavy and sour. The station's internal monitor screens were open fields of static. She noted it absently, sliding into a couch in front of the giant computer console that dominated the room. There was probably a manual shutdown somewhere in the room, but she didn't want to waste time trying to find it. DS stations each had their own unique setup and codes, as individual and varied as was possible to avoid exactly what she was about to do. Only those trained in the company machines with high clearance ratings would know what to look for in the main console itself. And C2 is high enough, thank you God. She dropped the rifle next to her and pulled the first of the 6 panels that lined the base of the machine, ducking her head underneath. The complicated circuit boards identified themselves by the colour of wiring and plexi, red and green, condenser slates. The second and third were decoding primaries, and she cursed under her breath as she yanked at the fourth, stuck stubbornly into its frame. She wished she could just shoot the fucking thing, but the shielded metals wouldn't allow for it. She wasn't so excited about losing an eye in her hurry to get at it. This better be the one. Goddamn company pieced together hunk of crap. A straining jerk with both hands, and the panel popped. She ducked and squinted upward, and a wave of cool relief washed over her as she reached for the circuitry hand laser on her belt and clicked it to life. Blue and black, one of the few consistencies in the newer models. She rolled onto her back and pushed herself closer. Sweat ran across her forehead and dripped into her ears as she used the small precision tool to cut across the base of a blue-coated wire. The amplifier slate seemed undamaged, no evidence of burn, which meant the impairment was deeper into the machine. It didn't matter. Whatever had shorted out and then rewired itself into their problem would be stopped with a few tiny cuts she made, the bright white line between the dual tips of the laser slicing cleanly through the coloured threads. There. It was done. Slide the panel back into place and let the system shut the amplifier off for them. If it worked the way it was supposed to, she'd be able to access the team helmet cams from here too. Full contact restored. She turned off the laser, reached up to push the hatch closed, and froze as tiny claws skittered up her legs and a thick tail coiled across her belly. It was dark for maybe a long time, he wasn't sure, and he woke up to a wash of red light and strong arms around him. His body was held gently, but the pain was terrible, a beast that ate him from inside. Far away at first, and then louder. "Teep, cover us! Oh shit, Candyman!" Pulaski opened his eyes, and a dark face swam into view, sweaty and scared and smiling a sick smile. He knew that face. Jess. Good old Jess. Looking afraid and still smiling like that. "It's going to be okay, Candyman. We're going to get you out of here," said the face that was Jess. The smile was awful, trembling, but the voice was sweet and cool and strong. Pulaski blinked, and everything was clearer now. The sounds and smells sharper, familiar. He heard a weapon fire, and Jess looked away, the smile suddenly gone. Pulaski closed his eyes, sleepy. "Talk to me, Teep," a voice called back from somewhere very close. "We got more coming, the offshoot. They're coming from somewhere down there." That was Teepy, bug bait. He was smart. Vikings were right on. Suddenly he remembered everything, where he was and why. He opened his eyes and stared up into Jess's dark and serious gaze, not wanting to believe any of it. The station, the running drones, the knife. He'd been hit, and hit hard. A fucking bug of all things. Sheila would laugh her ass off that he'd been hit by a stupid bug. "Showed that fucker," he said, and it came out in a whisper that made him cough weakly. Jesus, that hurt. Like his guts had been stuffed with broken glass, like a bug had speared him. He wanted to ask how bad, but could see it on Jess's face. "You just hang on, baby, hang on," said Jess. "We're getting you out, just lay easy, hang on." There was more shooting, and Jess laid him down and rose into a crouch, firing his own rifle. Moved away to join Teep. Pulaski hoped they were kicking ass, and for some reason, it was okay that he was just lying here. Jess had told him to. It was cool. He'd been hit. A bug howled, and there was more fire, and Pulaski felt the vibrations on the side of his face, the sound and feel of pounding movement soft and steady through the cool floor. It reminded him of something, and he closed his eyes again. The pain less now that he was still. He concentrated on the memory and found it. Let the boys kick ass while he remembered, smiling. Sheila and me in that cabin when the storm came. We fucked and ate fish we caught, and the skies opened and beat against the roof in the dark. We went outside and had sex again, and the rain on her skin was like music. And I could feel her and smell her, and she laughed to be in the mud, hear the sound of the rain. He drifted into the dark, happy. Jess fired again, brought down the screaming drone that leapt for him in a squeeze of the trigger. It shrieked and died, clattering to the smoking floor. It was too dark to see more than a few meters down the offshoot. The emergency lights were limited to main corridors. Teep yelled and fired at another drone, appearing suddenly from out of the inky shadows. Jess dropped to his knees next to Pulaski and glanced down, his heart hammering in his chest at the sight of the big man's still form. He raised his rifle one-handed and fired again, pressing his free hand against the Candyman's throat as another drone blew apart in a spray of hissing blood. A pulse, faint but there beneath his gloved fingers. Jess stood up and shouted to Teep, both of them firing at another bug that had lunged out of the dark. "It's no good, Teep. Too damn many of them. Fall back." Jess reached down and grabbed at the splash suit at the back of Pulaski's neck, pulling up a handful. He raised his rifle with the other straining arm and fired past Teep at a shadow that leapt into the light. The hissing bug was thrown back against one wall, chunks of its abdomen torn out and away. He took a step back, both arms aching now. The Candyman's dead weight was tremendous, amazing, but his body inched across the slick and bloody floor as Jess pulled. Teep had backed up with him, spraying the dark offshoot wildly in a sweeping arc. "Go! I got it!" Teep shouted, and targeted another grinning creature, its long skull exploding into smoking shrapnel. Jess backed down the hall as quickly as he could, his muscles screaming, Pulaski's heavy body sliding in the thick smear of blood that poured from his wounds. They were at the bend now, the corner of the L-shaped corridor, the door back to the secured area just in view. Teep was still targeting, laying down a steady stream of bullets against the shrieks and hisses of the attackers. He backed up another step. "Gonna make it 10 meters. Hang on, Candyman." And Teep's rifle clicked empty. Before Jess could raise his own weapon, Teep had dropped his, thrown it down and pulled up the mask from around his neck in a flurry of panic. He fell to the floor, his covered face turning toward Jess, eyes wide and filled with terror and silent plea. "Teep!" From out of the blackness of the offshoot, a drone leapt to Teep's side and snatched him up, hissing and drooling. Another of the grinning monsters joined in, helping to lift Teep's limp body. In only a second, they were gone, back into the darkness with their living prize.